So, good morning. It is 9:01 by our clock here on the wall, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the CMH Board of Directors meeting here on Friday, August 23rd, 2024. There's a call to order. First on our agenda is that. Second on our agenda is the invocation. I've asked Commissioner Rhodey if she would provide that for us this morning, and she kindly agreed.
Yes, thank you. Dear God, thank you for giving us this opportunity today to come together to work towards meeting the needs of our community. Just pray that you would give us wisdom and discernment as we consider this agenda and all of its items in front of us. We thank you for all of the people who have invested in helping those who are hurting and who have needs throughout our community. So we thank you for all of those who work for CMH and pray that you give them strength and endurance in their work, and that we would have discernment as we make decisions today. In your name, amen.
Amen.
And number 3 is the CMHOC mission and vision statements. Community Mental Health of Ottawa County partners with people with mental illness, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and substance use disorder, and the broader community to improve lives and be a premier mental health agency in Michigan. The vision, Community Mental Health of Ottawa County strives to enhance the quality of life for all residents. Next up is public comment. Interested in providing public comment, please step forward to the podium. You have 3 minutes to discuss or comment. Thank you.
Dave Barnowski and I own in Fort Sheldon Township. One, from recent experience, that clock is definitely not accurate. It's about 3 or 4 minutes ahead. 2, I'm not positive that this is the case, but it looked like one of the commissioners, or one of the board members, was passing out late handout. I just want to register I may be wrong, but I just want to register a general objection to late materials being shown up if they are going to contribute to decisions, public decisions. Please bring enough for all of us. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Good morning, Jenna Vipon with Spring Lake Township. I am here on behalf of the Momentum Center, and Barbara Van Horsen would normally have attended. However, she's mourning the loss of her eldest son. So please keep her in your thoughts and prayers during this time. We understand that the RFP process was delayed, and we look forward to learning the decision in the coming weeks. We are confident, given the impact of our work on so many Ottawa County resident lives, that funding, although now capped at a reduced level, will be renewed. This funding is critical in supporting these services that so cost effectively help mitigate the lack of current available clinical support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Boston, City of Holland. The customer service survey arrived in the mail, and I wonder why it's not like posted on the website so people could just digitize it. Some PHPs even have it on their website and Facebook page. It seems like a lot of envelopes, and that I just think it could be more efficient by letting it be available electronically.
Good idea. Thank you. It's a good idea. All right. It's at the end of public comment. We're going to move on to the consent items. The suggested motion is to approve the consent items, and I'd like to amend before we go through this approval process to move the consent, to move number 9 to number 6 before the executive director's report. So we can do business and give kind of a nice flow for the executive director to have give his report here to the board. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda for August 23rd, 2024 CMH Board of Directors meeting to move item 9 to number 6?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, and so for the all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, the agenda is amended. Now we move on to the consent items. As the agenda was amended, suggested motion is to approve the consent items as followed. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Support. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm
Madam Chair,
sorry.
Is it possible to segregate the items on the consent agenda for contracts to consider them individually?
And we can do that. Oh, so are we amending the agenda? I think we, in the past, what we've done with the contracts is that we have taken them either individually or all as a group. So maybe when we get to contracts, we can make that recommendation, maybe motion
Fine.
at that point, do you think?
Yes, thank you.
I'm always looking for my parliamentarian to make sure that sounds, does that make sense out there? Okay, thank you, Bill. Thumbs up, that's where I need it. All right, so all those in favor of approving the consent with the following items, the agenda and the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So we are moving on to new business, the recommended changes to the Board of Governance structure and schedule. Motion is to approve the establishment of finance and program planning quality improvement subcommittees of the CMHOC Board of Directors. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support? Support. And discussion. You want to talk? Yes, Dr. Bashirs.
What I'm looking for is permission from the board to engage with the chair over the next couple of weeks to propose the creation of these committees, how the structure would work, the processes, all of the rules and stuff. We used to have these subcommittees a while ago, and so it's not new to a CMH board. But these subcommittees will be vital in allowing due diligence time on looking at contracts or new programs and the like. It will allow us to spend more time in addressing them instead of having the board getting the information, say, a week before the full board, and really not enough time to ask critical questions or direct staff on certain things. It will also allow board members that are interested in that type of work, contract work, to develop expertise instead of all of you having to be an expert in every aspect of CMH operations and contracts. So the finance committee, in theory, would meet literally usually 2 weeks before the board meeting. That's usually the structure. And it has a number set by the board chair, and you just need a majority for a quorum. And it would make motions to put things forward to the Board of Commissioners, full board, full CMH board to consider. The Program and Planning Committee sometimes can meet every other month. It doesn't have to meet monthly. And that's a subcommittee that looks at any new programs or any new grants that we're doing to do due diligence and do an evaluation if it fits in our mission or if it fits within where we're going in our strategic plan. And it also incorporates quality standard review. So what I want is just the endorsement of the board to move ahead and put the structure forward with our chair for feedback on the whole board in September so that we can implement it in October, is what I would look for. So that's just a little background on why I want to do it. It's my belief there's not enough time in these board members and these board meetings to appropriately educate both the community and the board. These are public meetings, these subcommittees, and commissioners that are not on the subcommittee are always welcome to come and listen. You're just not a part of the official practice, but it's not I mean, if Stephen wanted to come and he's not, he could come. Anybody can come to it. But it will allow us to kind of operationalize some of the things we need to do and have a lot more due diligence at a detailed level for what we're trying to accomplish as a board. So this is the background. So the motion's really to give me permission to move forward with the chair and then come back with the actual structure, times, dates, a whole kind of schedule with it. and process. And they'll give me time to look at what we did in the past. You'll even have examples what the minutes look like in the past and what the agendas look like. So you get a sense of what it's like. So just a little background.
Any discussion? Mr. Byrd?
Yes, I'd like to support what you're proposing to do, Michael. Of all the board members here, I probably am maybe the only one who remembers when we used to do that in the CMH agency. And from having attended a number of those subcommittee meetings in the past, it was very efficient in terms of having a robust dialogue and understanding of issues prior to coming to a board meeting and having the full board bogged down in those kinds of discussions. So I think it's going to be very helpful.
Mr. Rockman?
Dr. Bashir, I support that process. When I'm sitting up here, a lot of times it feels like I'm the judge in a court and I have to be persuaded. Like say these contracts, I would like presented to me like making an argument why I should support this, why I should vote for it. And that's hard to do if you're basically coming here on motion day and hearing it maybe for the first time. And in a lot of ways, I think this is like motion day. And I can say that, oftentimes a judge circuit court clerk or judge has his own clerk who's preparing a memorandum for the judge to review, and plus the litigants themselves present their motion briefs ahead of time before you even have that motion day to study and review the arguments and the support for them. And when it comes to voting on these contracts, it's really important to me I want to know up front why this is really important that we enter into this agreement. And what's the support? It could be, what's the legal support? What does the Medicaid manual say we have to do or should be doing?
Right.
I'd like to know that. Because otherwise I find myself having to do a lot of my own research and to dig things up because I don't know. And I'm probably missing a lot of things that I'm unaware of. And it would be just very refreshing to have all of this information presented to us. And if we do these committees, I'm wondering what the format of the information that's going to be presented to the board is going to look like. Is it going to look like, a legal memorandum? It's laying out what the facts of the case are, the issues are being presented, the law, I guess you would say, what does the Medicaid manual say we have to do, the various policies and provisions we have to follow, and then present us with an analysis and a recommended conclusion. And then when I come to these meetings, I've already been prepared with that information, and I at least have good solid grounding to ask follow-up questions to try to fill in any blanks that I'm seeing there. So I guess the long and short of it is I support this idea. And I guess the only thing is I'm trying to figure out, how would that be presented to us ahead of time so we can be prepared?
Right. And what I'll say is it will allow the opportunity for you to develop more trust in the staff that is actually hired to do the due diligence that you're doing so that you can really be a governance, right? Because if not, if you feel like you have to be the judge of that's overwhelming. But it's about us developing trust that I'm hired to do that due diligence based on the structure of that subcommittee. Because what will end up happening is that one of you will present the contracts to the full board. Instead of staff coming up and going, here's why we need the thing, and if we don't have it by tomorrow, we're screwed, type of thing, right? So this will allow you to trust and gain trust in a subcommittee, get the information. Then when it comes to the full board, if you're not somebody that needs to know every little detail, you'll have trust that your colleagues have asked those questions. So that's another reason why, yeah.
I'm sorry, Rob.
When you say that there's going to be another committee that's going to focus on it, is it going to be similar to like one person's searching and then getting other information? So to me, it sounds like it's similar to like high school when they take the student council and each
Mhm.
person is like, there's one person that deals with the money, one person deals with like the people, and then one person gives the idea, and then you have like the other extra people, and then they give them ideas so that they can get to the point of where they need to be. That's what it
That's a
sounds
good
like to
analogy.
me.
Yeah.
Because if you did it that way, it'd be a lot easier than just here
Mhm.
with like little information, with
Right.
extra information.
It's a great analogy.
Very much. Commissioner Klein-Jones?
So, a solid plan, of course, if it was done before. Other than past minutes from when this was done previously, by this board, I'm interested in what governing documents, statutes, you're going to use to develop this framework, as well as any outside input you're going to seek, or consultation like from CMHA, to make sure that we're not operating in a vacuum.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a
Ms. Bun-
comment.
Bunce.
So I've been on this board since a year ago, March, and during my orientation in this handbook, article number 11, it says committees. And I've been asking and thinking for over a year, where are the committees? It's not unusual for any board. I have my own board of directors. We have 3 different committees. There's no possible way we can know everything about everything with over a $60 million budget. Committees just makes so much sense, not to mention article number 11 is right here. So I completely support having committees. It's what we need to do.
Thank you, Ms. Bunce.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Feels pretty robust. I think we've covered kind of broad aspects of implementation. So, all right. Seeing no more discussion, we'll go ahead and go to a vote. And this one doesn't involve dollars and cents. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the fiscal year 2024 July financial statement with Amy Bodville Mast. Sometimes I think I have a speech impediment, Amy, so it's my problem, not yours. Suggested motion is to approve FY 2024 financial statements as presented. Do I have a motion?
Second.
And now discussion. Good morning.
Statements for, mental health and education fund and village and grants are going to continue in a healthy position, within CMH, we, last 6 weeks of the year, so it's kind of into that hurried timeline, getting providers billing and, starting to plan for all of that, trying to catch up our expenses to our revenues. We are on track. No real concerns at this point in either fund CMH level. Regionally, you'll see that, well, I guess that's in the next, but any questions about point?
I have a question. It's said that we're in a healthy position, and I was just wondering, if you could elaborate on that a little bit more when it comes to these various categories of revenues and expenses. If in any way you can particularize how, say, we're in a healthy position because of the autism revenues. It's such a broad category. I really have no idea what it's being applied to, what it's being used for. And as far as a healthy position, what supports and services, are we providing out of revenues that indicate that we're in a healthy position because of the actual money we've received? I guess, if I could have a little more descriptive to explain why that, say, the autism category is, for an example, is in a healthy position because of the funds that are received so far.
So if you look at the revenues of the mental health SUD fund, the autism does have a standalone revenue line, and our year-to-date budgeted revenues are below our actual received revenues. So we have been retaining more revenue, more activity, and it's been covered, totally funded by the Medicaid revenue. So remaining in a healthy position just means that we have enough revenue receipted to cover all of the expenses by category. So if you look at Medicaid overall budgeted year to actual, you'll see that it's under budget, but it's kind of a balance because we're paid based on our actual services delivered, our expenses reported. So where we're budgeting and where our revenues are is revenues over expenses. So that when I talk about being in a healthy position, it means that we're not behind on any revenue needed to cover all of our expenses.
Okay. It's probably my question's beyond the scope of what this report is supposed to do. And, the thing that I struggle with is just like example, the autism category. I imagine there are various supports and services that fall within that category. And there's a certain amount of revenues allocated to each one of those. And I don't know which of those various supports and services, what they are, how much money's been allocated to them, and whether that's sufficient to pay for those services. And I don't know if maybe that's just something we're going to have to develop in the future so that we can get that kind of information. So I have a clear understanding when we're talking about, I got this money in revenue for the autism category. I know that, we don't get a bunch of money and just throw it at autism. We throws at particular things, particular services. And I don't know what those services are.
So we are funding Medicaid eligible services based on our population and needs of our community. And so it kind of adjusts based on the actual delivery of services to the actual needs of the consumer. So we have budgets in place, but those have to be adjusted because we can't, it's all a projection as we go through the year. We're kind of, they backfill the revenue to cover expenses based on Medicaid eligible services that were provided. We expect we anticipate this many consumers with autism services, and that's our budget. But we may have more services and more consumers. And so as we submit our encounter data, our claims, as we bill the state for our Medicaid revenue, those things get adjusted and we receive revenues that align with the actual services that were delivered.
Okay.
So some of that, there are programs that are specific to certain Medicaid services and that certain consumers, like Healthy Michigan is a Medicaid benefit plan. We have the Medicaid capitation that kind of covers all of the services. There are a lot of waivers that we receive Medicaid funding through. So it's kind of a way to cover all of those services and make sure they're all covered and that we have enough funding streams to balance out across the whole of all of our consumer needs.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to belabor it. I guess an example, and I'm just thinking about is under autism, is there certain amounts of that revenue that are dedicated for, and I don't know if it's a particular Medicaid provider manual service, but let's say it's for speech and language, OT, whatever that service might be. Is there a certain amount of dollars been allocated for that? And is that look sufficient for the needs that we have to meet under the manual for those various services we're required to do? And I guess that's more of a granular level that doesn't really fit what we're doing right here. So I'm just throwing it out there. I think in the future, maybe that's what committees are going to do and can present that information to us. So when I take a look at this, I have a clear idea of the context behind each of these categories, how the money's being brought in and allocated and how it's being spent. I guess it's the big picture.
It's important to understand the difference between a traditional budget in a business versus how we operate. We have projections and we try to give the regional entity and the state our best guess of what our consumer population needs are going to be. And it's all based on treatment plans and their agreed upon service. You know, it's not like we budget $10,000 of OT and we spend every last $10,000 of that. We don't know how many people will need OT services, you know, speech services. So we, over the last 3 years, maybe we had $10,000 of services that we delivered in that category. So that's what we budget. But it is constantly changing. That's why we do a monthly look back for the LRE, do a spending plan that adjusts. We adjust our revenues and expenses monthly at the regional level to account for actual services that have been delivered and services that we have delivered and haven't booked yet to the LRE. So it's a whole timing issue. It doesn't operate like a traditional budget where we want to spend this money in these categories. So how can we do that? We're going to receive, we anticipate this much in revenue. We know we have this population of consumers. How can we afford to serve them all? And, you know, that's kind of how rates are adjusted, because you have to account for, you only have a certain level of revenue in general. And you have to be able to afford all of the services across all of the Medicaid eligible services that we deliver.
I was just going to ask, so, and maybe it'll make it a little more clear. So your projections are based upon historical data, correct? Does the LRE then give you that information, or is that information you're tracking independently? Go
All
ahead.
of the above.
All of the above. And so what I'm hearing is that you get kind of monies based upon like allocated budgeted dollars from the state based upon those projections. And then it's incumbent upon CMH to, through documentation, support the reimbursement of those services. And so our contracted groups, so people who are providing the support services, report into you so that that documentation can therefore be fed into, is it the LRE and then the state?
Mhm.
And then you're looking monthly to see, are we on track?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we're considered both CMH and a payer. So we are like the payer for all of our contracted providers. And then we record all those encounters to the state. They pay, we are paid in both a prepayment, which is based on projections, and a post payment each month, which is based on actual.
Actuals, yep. Understood. Does that make it more clear?
Well, it demonstrates, I think, the importance of these educational sessions on the funding
Right.
streams.
Coming up.
Absolutely, but also the importance of documentation too.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Mhm.
The thing is, we're in a capitated system, but we have to demonstrate the use of that money through encounter code. So even though there are various funding buckets with different names, and they have some limits on what you can use it for, there are hundreds of codes in each one. So you would think like, well, how much money are you spending on that specific service? Well, what was a historical point? But our budgets are not that detailed
So
to
it'd
the
be
level of
based on
specificity.
data.
Correct.
Does that fluctuates on how many people that comes and how many people that don't come?
Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another impact. Yeah.
Just to
Mr.
try
Bird.
to hopefully simplify this a little bit so that we as a board fully understand how the system works. Would it be fair to say that our annual budget is merely an estimate from the LRE as to what they think we might need to spend based on our encounters? What actually happens is based upon who comes through the door and what services they need. And it could very well be that we need more money than has been estimated, such
Mhm.
as Network 180 just saying they needed another $8 million.
Mhm.
The fact that we are $1 million under budget means we haven't needed to provide as many services as the estimate was calculated on. And to the extent that we don't have additional needs before the year end, we will just not use that extra $1 million here, but the LRE will then have it available to use somewhere else within our region. Is that a reasonable statement?
Or could it be what Robin is actually sharing too, is that we're not having people come through the doors as well, or there are
They
services.
don't have insurance or anything like
Yeah,
that, so
so
they
it could
don't
be
go through.
utilization. Yeah.
So people that do actually need help, but they don't know how to get it. And they don't understand how to get into the system so that they can get the help they need. They don't go out, they like avoid because they don't think they need it when they actually do need it, which has been proven in datas. So.
Okay.
Robust discussion. Good, good.
Deeper than the finance.
No, it's good. It's really good discussion. And like Dr. Brashear said, it's what, and also Mr. Rockman, it's good that we're going to have these learning sessions.
Yeah.
Very timely, very timely. All right. So let me see here as my agenda goes. We're moving on to the LRE. It's a fiscal year 2024, June LRE FSR. Do we need to vote on this singularly? All right. So the motion on the floor is to approve the FY 2024 July financial statement as presented. All those well, we're going to do a roll call vote. So. Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. And motion passes. All right, now moving on to the information only. FY 2023 June LRE FSR, attachment B. Amy?
So this is the combined monthly financial status report for the region. For the month of June. Questions on there? Us. This also demonstrates where we are in a healthy position because we've receded revenues ahead of our expenses. So we've already received the revenues for expenses through June. So we have according to this, there's a $5 million surplus, which actually, as the year progresses, it continues to come closer together. We're projecting, just under $500,000 variance at the end. That's our projection. But, it's good that we have the revenue. There are some concerns regional. Exceeded the money,
Yeah.
so that keeps us in a healthy state.
Are there any updates about the regional concerns with Network 180?
So at the regional level, it's unclear exactly how the projected deficit from Network 180, that's Kent County CMH, will be closed. They did present a plan to address the deficit, but their plan for next year still had a $6 million deficit. So the LRE board is in the process of trying to figure out how to remedy this, either through the use of the internal service fund or yet another advance, because they got an advance to make it through this year on their kind of payments early for next year. The real issue besides the over expenditures is the question we're trying to answer is, does the region get enough revenue to meet the Medicaid obligation? And the answer is, we don't know. We have to do an in-depth analysis on what are the actual cost of care needs for all of the boards and answer that question. Because if not, if it's true that Network 180 can never close the deficit, then that means revenue has to come from somewhere, and that would be us. So we're paying attention. That's why I'm happy to see in our agenda today, we're going to appoint somebody to that board. We need all of our votes. And I will say the staff at Network 180 are working diligently to try to figure it out. They have a $200 million budget. So for them, you know, it's a small percentage being over, but it has huge ramifications for the region. They're working hard, but we still don't have clarity yet on the solution. And there's been multiple meetings, and I think I've been sending stuff out to you as a group when I learn it, but it's a dilemma.
How large, you said 2 million,
Right now, they're
$200 million?
projecting,
No,
right
but
now,
it's an
they're-
$8 million deficit. What's the?
so by
the
end year,
denominator.
so by the end of this year, 24, they're still projecting a deficit. It could be as high as 11 million. Next year, they're starting off the budget with a $6 million deficit in the budget.
Using the same projection tools that
Yeah.
we use
So
here.
the reality of the situation is that we still don't necessarily know the root cause besides a lack of revenue. And so we're doing due diligence as a region to figure that out. But they're trying, I'll tell you.
Services,
Yeah.
increase in population, more
It's
diagnoses.
my fundamental belief that the system isn't funded appropriately
Mhm.
to meet the service demands and obligations. And that's just playing out in Kent County significantly, but it could be any of us at any time with an increase in utilization in any high-cost item like residential or inpatient hospitalization. You can see that we're on a course to get just about even.
Mhm.
One spike in utilization, and we're network 180 with a deficit. So that's why you have to have tight controls and look at it in advocacy at the state level for more revenue for the people we're obligated to serve, which will begin.
Mr. Byrd.
Michael, there are what, 10 LREs across the state?
Correct.
My understanding is that that's also a pool. So if our LRE winds up trying to fill this deficit, and let's say it winds up $5 million for
Yeah.
the LRE. If another LRE has a surplus, then that money can be allocated to our LRE to bail us out and help us balance out.
If the state allows it. The state has control over transfers of Medicaid dollars from region to region. It isn't an automatic, like you can remember the days when I was here last, we had this in general fund. And CMH boards could give us general funds if they had access. In fact, Oakland County came to our rescue at one point when we had a general fund deficit. And Jeff Brown, who was the executive director over there, said, I have X amount of million excess in GF, I can give it to Ottawa. On Medicaid, it has to go through a far more robust process and authorization at the state level. But yes, in theory,
Above us.
right. Yeah, so in theory, they can the state can transfer excess Medicaid to a region, but you still have to pay it back. It's never a gift. So if you get extra revenue, they put you on a payment plan.
Oh.
So,
We don't want that.
no, we do
Commissioner
exactly
Rhodey?
that, right?
I'm just curious, about the amount that's allocated, to the different entities. When you look at population, for instance, of counties,
Mhm.
200 million is not proportional, I don't think, to the population differences between Ottawa and Kent. So it
Sure.
must be there's higher utilization in Kent.
Well, there's a whole elaborate way of coming up with the Medicaid rates for us that the state uses through an organization called Milliman. And they go through a rate setting process every year to determine how much Medicaid each region will get. Within the region decides via contract how to disperse that among its partners. Right? So the calculation at the state of how much we get has regional modifiers, regional factors built in that sometimes are logical and sometimes are political, to be honest with you. And so I'm on the constant lookout out of, do we get our fair share? We did that with general fund when I was here last, now it's Medicaid. So there are intensity factors based on prevalence rates of what people utilize that factor into it. But I'll tell you what's not factor into it, the true cost of residential care or the true cost of CLS care. Right? And so as a result, we're asked to do all of our service array with the same bucket of money, regardless of what it costs for the service.
Mhm.
But regionally, there are differences among us. And it's contentious every year and how the rates are set and who gets what.
So I
So,
know words like surplus become problematic here in the community as well,
Mhm.
because there are people who are seeking services and as you're mentioning too, even like residential settings. And I mean, there's a lot to improve upon, right? A lot to be
Yep.
excited about, but
right.
yeah, surplus and giving to potentially poor planning. I don't know that to be a fact for root cause, but that's a bitter pill to swallow sometimes
Right.
here. So. Any further discussion or questions for Amy? Seeing none, thank you. All right, moving on. Next on the agenda is the August 24 service contracts with Mr. Bill Phelps. The motion is to approve the August 2024 service contracts as presented. And we're going to do this, the approval will be individually. So is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there support?
Yep.
Second. All right. And discussion. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning. First two kind of, can you hear me okay? The first two kind of lump in together, ICAS and preferred employment. This is a pilot project that we're working on, collaborating with MRS, Michigan Rehabilitative Services. We'll be providing specific training to staff at these two agencies to get this customized employment. Please don't ask me what that means. That's something that we'll be working on. We have two folks in each, one person at each place that will be getting the services under this customized employment. And then once a job has been found, then they'll switch back to our traditional supported employment program. So that's the first two.
Madam Chair,
The first two.
on these items, these are two examples that would have went to our Program and Planning Committee first. A new pilot program for supportive employment, us participating in it, and there'd be due diligence at that Program and Planning Committee to say, oh, that fits to what we're trying to do with supportive employment, move it forward to the board, right? So this is an evidence-based practice that the state just put into place on a pilot basis on specific forms of supportive employment, job coaching and the like. And it's a lot more robust than your traditional support employment interventions. And so we wanted to be on the front end of this just to see if the model works. So we wanted to have one or two identified folks that want to participate in it and just to see if the model is actually efficacious or not. And so that's why these are coming. We're kind of like on the front end of stuff. But this would be an example of what would come to that Program and Planning Committee first, because it's a new program offering or a new way of doing it. And the board can get educated on it instead of like, well, it's a little bit more robust than our old supportive employment. Well, what does that mean? Right. So that's a good example, these two things of us trying to utilize a new model and being on the front end. And it stays within the DD budget, so we're not projecting over expenditures as a result of doing this. Just thought I'd give feedback.
Any further discussion? Mr. Byrd?
I do have a question. We have a financial category of $0 to $50,000. I think we've raised this question in the past. Is it possible to assign a value for each individual contract and say, this one individual in contract one is going to be $10,000. The one individual in contract two is going to be $12,000. Because we have no idea at this point the magnitude, other than you've put it in this particular bucket of a range of
Yeah.
service costs.
Here's the thing with buckets versus itemization. I'm stepping in, Bill. Sorry. The value of a range is if your expenditures go $1 more over than what you said, I got to bring it back to this board. Right? So as long, I'm all for, let's get close to the projected estimated cost, as long as we develop rules plus or minus a certain percentage. Because that's the only reason why we have these huge ranges. It could be 0 to X, right? So I'm all for, let's go ahead and add the estimated cost based on this, as long as there is some type of percentage that if we go over the estimated projection, that I don't have to bring it back and say, well, we spent $2 more than we said we were. So if we can get to that, I think is exactly where we need to meet, we need to go to, because the ranges are too big. And it's hard for you as a board to know, like, well, did we just book $250,000 of expenditures for this range? No, we end up just doing it on actual. So there's a way to do both. There's a way, Tom, to say, here's the estimated cost. As long as we can, in the finance subcommittee or the board, agree on some principles of plus or minus a certain percentage, well, we run the risk of you saying you exceeded your authorization if there's an unexpected increase in expenditures for whatever reason. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So if we have the range, let's do that.
Any further discussion, Mr. Klein?
Do the ranges as they stand, are those set up? I mean, they're very square. Are these just because it makes it easier down range as far as reporting out to the state and to the federal government? Is that why they're set up like that? So an internal metric would have to fit within that to make your life easier as well.
Yeah. Correct.
I just have one comment, and maybe it doesn't matter, but on this, the range is 0 to 50. On this, the range is 50 to 250. So that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's the first one.
Not 50
Yeah.
to 250.
Right.
I'm saying 50,000 to 250,000.
Yeah, it's not that one. It's the,
It's- Okay, so that's on the ICUS one and the preferred employer.
Alright.
Both of them say that.
Approve as amended.
So 0 to 50. You're welcome.
Yeah. So which is it? It's
it's the lower amount.
the lower amount. Okay. I'm writing this as we go. All right. I think I'll read it that way then. All right. Is there any more discussion? I think I want to go to a vote on each of these individually right now as they're fresh in our minds, and especially with that kind of change. So as I have it written, the first is, the motion is to approve the Indian Trails contract as presented at the financial category of $0 to $50,000. And we're going to go to a roll call vote.
Yes.
Well, like, I thought you said drill, like drilling.
Oh, drill, baby, drill. No.
I think drilling.
Yes.
Yes,
Abstain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And the motion
No.
passes. All right, the next one is to approve preferred employment and living services contracts as presented at a financial category of $0 to $50,000. And Amanda, I probably jumped really fast on that for you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
Motion, but you are getting somebody to motion and support
It's already been put out, hasn't it?
the generic motion. These are different.
Yeah, that's the breaking it into.
Just want to make sure your bases.
Yeah, nope, I'm sorry. I've been writing as we go here, trying to stay organized. All right. Let's go back then and make sure we get a support on the book. So do I have a motion to approve Indian Trails contract as presented from $0 to $50,000?
so moved.
Support.
Support, thank you. Do we want to go back through and vote, or can we go with the assigned vote as passed?
I think you can
Because
go
we
with
said the
the
motion
assignment.
passes. All right. So the next motion is to approve the preferred employment and living supports contracted as presented. $0 to $50,000 is the financial category. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right, now, and it's been presented, so we'll go to a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Abstain.
Yes.
Yes. And the motion passes. Thank you. Next, Beacon Specialized Living Services.
Number 3 is with Beacon Specialized Residential Living Services. We have an individual that's we're the county of financial responsibility. MDHHS has been paying for this placement. On September 4, he turns 26. And at that point, yeah, I don't understand it either, Stephen. He turns 26 and we're responsible to start paying. He wants to stay in the current house that he's in. And this home was not in the service area. And has 22 homes total, and I think we have 9 of them in our contract right now. Because our home's not in the contract, we're adding the homes.
And it's one of those things where when we have a contract, if we need to add an element to a contract, bringing it back when you keep adding a home within the existing contract that still has the same financial range is something we'll have to talk about in the subcommittee and bring here.
Mhm.
Because it's just a lot of, now we have to add home 7
Right.
to the contract, but the dollar amount range is in the same bucket.
I think having a picture of like
Yeah.
how many homes we actually, and as we're adding, what that means financially as we do that, what it means the number of beds available, but also the financial impact.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the financial impact is stay within the residential budget.
There you
There's
go.
no like, if any one of these put us over like our Medicaid budget, then so we have to get a lot more specific with that over time. But when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, did we just add another $750,000 of expense? It's the same bucket of money.
Mhm.
And so that's what makes this hard to fathom.
Okay, another question. On this page, it says $750,000. On this page, it says $50,000 to $250,000.
Yeah.
So which one is it?
I don't know, which one is it?
So I can speak to that. So this is the confusion that we have, and presenting this, should we present it as this can be the total cost for this particular person to add on to the contract? Or do we need to give the total range of the organization?
Mhm.
So that's the thing that hopefully will, in the committee, we'll decide what's the best way to communicate this to you guys. I hope that makes sense. So that's the difference.
So the one sheet has everybody that that's the contract amount for everybody that is housed with Beacon. This is the contract amount for this new individual that's moving in on the one sheet
So the smaller amount is the new one. That's what you're
for the
saying.
one person.
For the one.
Yeah, for the
yeah.
new person, or the new,
But it-
the new
yeah.
site, because the person's already there, but we're just not.
It's
paying.
within the confines of the
Any other-
750.
Other people that are in there that are going in this, or is it just that person? Is
That
like
person, yeah.
just that person?
Yeah, so I'd be using the amount on the descriptive, not the table.
Mm.
And is this person, this is just a question, is this person with other groups of people that are in this?
Mhm.
So it's like a group home, but like also separated because was younger.
No, it's just a group home and he just needs us to fund it. It's an individual, to fund this individual. There might be other people in the home that they're not Ottawa County folks or we don't pay for. So this just allows us to fund the placement.
Okay, so what we're going to be approving today is the financial category of 50,000 to 250,000. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Kendrick, Commissioner Kendrick from Wenzel, sorry.
I have some confusion with this with the two different totals because I guess long-term or if something were to happen, which one legally stands? Because there's
250.
confusion as to what is what and it doesn't specifically state here that, so legally,
It's what you approve in the motion. So what you say, the range on that sheet is the approval.
okay.
So it can go up to $250,000.
Right.
Depending upon how long, length of stay, other circumstances.
Correct.
Yep.
And that's for this one.
And,
so
and
that
just
will-
to further confuse the issue, right now, there's one person proposing to be placed at this house number 7. And he'll fall somewhere in the 50 to 250.
Sure.
It's, if we were to add a second person in the future to that home, we might still be within that same range of 50 to 250 for
Correct.
2 people. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Not per person.
Correct.
This is not a per person.
This is not an individualized estimate of their exact costs, and that's what we have to get
That's
worked out. Because these are just guesses on the ranges that it could possibly be. We don't know how, we may figure out, we may know the daily rate of how much we're paying this provider, and we may try to annualize that, right? But this is adding both a house to the provider network and allowing funding for this person based on that approval to go through. So we could figure out the whole house, but we never know because we don't know how many people in that house are going to be Ottawa County residents.
Yeah.
Right? So it makes it difficult to project, but we can get more specific how we add residential providers and the specific requirements of the contract to bring to you because this is just confusing.
So right now, we're only supporting one person into this house is what.
That I'm aware of. Yeah.
That we
Mhm.
are aware of. And the other ones may or may not be a part of it or may be part of it
Right.
later on is what it's saying.
Mhm.
Instead of going to a place that's already supported
I
already
understand what you're saying.
is from my understanding.
Mhm.
So does this open up the opportunity then if somebody else needs this home and we already have this contract in place and we think it
Yes.
will stay within that range, we can just go ahead and use it?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any further? Oh, Robin?
Oh, so you're saying that if we support, then whoever else adds to it, it stays as this
Mhm.
amount?
Yeah.
Further discussion? All right, let's go ahead and vote on this one. The motion is to approve Beacon Specialized Living Services contract as presented with the financial constraint of $50,000 to $250,000. We'll go to a roll call vote category. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a motion. Forgive me. I'm doing these one by one is kind of a challenge. Do I have a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Yeah, so moved. Perfect. All right. So we've had the discussion.
I support it.
Yep.
She motions.
Right.
Yes.
Stain.
I sincerely apologize for this. This is what we are.
No, it's a bit confusing taking these out one by one, to be really honest. Yeah, and so because we have like a different financial category on the spreadsheet versus the individual contracts, it does make it very confusing. So I'm trying to, before we vote, put in that motion what it is we are in fact voting on.
Okay.
So that's the $50,000 to $250,000 category there, not the $750 that's there.
Okay, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Thing. I don't know. I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no.
Yes.
Yes. Motion pass. All right. And then moving on to contract number 4, the motion is to approve keys for 2 happiness counseling services as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Board.
I'll have discussion. We'll put it back in order, Bill, to make it, work better. About keys to happiness counseling.
This is a new provider that's located in Coopersville, which is really ideal for us because right now we do not have any providers in that northwest section of the county. They'll be providing outpatient and targeted case management for children. And the estimate is there's 1 staff person that will be providing the service, so the estimate is there'll be at least $50,000 worth of services billed, so that's why it was in the $50,000 to $250,000 range.
Mr. Byrd?
Just to clarify, this is a new provider and we don't have anyone currently utilizing them?
Yeah, right now, all of our outpatient providers are in kind of like the L shape, Grand Haven, down to Holland, and then kind of over into the Hudsonville, Jenison area. We do not have any providers with a actual business site in the Coopersville area for outpatient.
I have a dilemma here, and just to back away from this specific contract. As a policy board member, I'm being asked to approve a contract, and I have a choice. I can either be proactive and make sure I really understand what I'm voting on and then vote accordingly, or I can step back and say, well, okay, you gave us a contract, we'll rubber stamp it and approve it. I don't think I'm called to be a rubber stamp. And this gets down to a question that our executive director will talk about when he talks about the SWOT analysis. Internal communication and lack of I've got the wrong thing here. Oh, here it is. Lack of tension between CMH board members and lack of trust and communication from staff. I don't want this to be an adversarial dynamic where my hesitation to vote for a contract is perceived to be a lack of trust for staff. And this is the balance I'm dealing with. I don't want to simply take what the staff gives me and rubber stamp it without understanding it. And at this point, I don't understand enough about this contract that I am hesitant to vote affirmatively for it. So as a suggestion, and I don't know how we do it procedurally, but I'd like to move that we table this particular contract for a month so we have an opportunity to have more input and feedback and understanding so that I can vote fully informed. So I'll present that as a motion if that's appropriate.
Support.
Do we have support? Is there discussion?
I guess my question is, since, unless we're planning on having a breakout board meeting to discuss this contract sometime between now and when we meet next month, or we're going to do it in a non-public manner, online or something like that, then we won't revisit this until it comes back next month. So that's, my concern is that, as was pointed out, that area of the county is very devoid of service. And while a month of delay might not have any seriously detrimental impact, it will slow down standing up services in an area that we know they're needed. Contracts did go through this organization. I'd prefer an approval with a review, as opposed to a no, because, as an organization, they are either stood up there or now and are ready to accept people that we would like to get to them, or they're going to need time to run up, which is just going to take longer if we delay a month. So it really comes more down to timing for people in this area of the county that need it.
So there's no services out there right now, as we speak right now,
There's
from my,
not this type of service,
okay. And this type of services
outpatient therapy.
should have one over there, in my opinion. Just because some people can't go that far from where they are because they
Mhm.
don't have the financial help or need to get to the place that they actually need. From my opinion.
We'll go to a vote on tabling. Motion is to table this contract for, forgive me, Key to Happiness Counseling for another month. Would you be able to provide us additional information? or
Sure, I
what-
would have
what-
to know what it is and
Yeah.
method, but yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
maybe Mr. Byrd and Mr. Rockman, I don't know. You're interested in kind of more detail?
Certainly.
Would that be
Yes.
helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I really support this whole process of this committee presenting to this board more information about each and every one of these contracts. I think this fits right into that.
I think it probably fits into our kind of financial committee that we are planning on,
Sure.
that we voted on today, so.
Like,
All right.
from my understanding is that we all want like an update on how it goes. Right?
Absolutely. All right, so this one's just tabling, so we'll say all those in favor to table. Key to Happiness Counseling Services contract as written, please say aye.
I,
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes. So we'll add that to the next agenda. All right, and so the motion now is to approve the sports facilities company's contract as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
In discussion?
Is the contract. So the Civic Center is under new management. And we have what's called Recovery Palooza coming up in September. And we have to get a contract with this new management company, which is sports facilities company out of Florida. So what we'll be using this money for is to pay for rent for the day at the Civic Center, and then some snacky items and stuff like that, some drinks. So that's the purpose of this contract.
So just a change in service provider for this particular event.
And it's through a grant that we already.
Through a
for
grant.
this, yeah.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
yes,
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes. Moving on to, the motion on the table is to approve the Health Source Saginaw contract as written. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
support,
Discussion, this is Health Source Saginaw.
Okay, House First Saginaw is a hospital and inpatient facility in the Saginaw area that is not part of our current provider panel for inpatient services. So we use them, this will be the second time that we've used them this year. We use them very infrequently, so we do not have a contract with them. Unfortunately, the flip side to that is anytime we do end up having to use them because all the other inpatient facilities are full, we have to do this single case agreement. And so that's what we're bringing to the board. We had one person go into the home, or in the inpatient facility in the beginning of August. For that.
Is there discussion? Mr. Rockman?
Bill, yeah, can you repeat that? Do we have, you're saying one person's already
Been through it.
approved for this? Okay. I'd like to get more information about, but the potential future of this individual. Are they going there? Is this part of like a stabilization process before they get moved into another home? And I guess that's the first question.
It's a psychiatric hospital. They were hospitalized for psychiatric reasons. They've already been discharged. So the
Okay.
contract comes, the single case retrospectively. So at the time, we can't, if not, then the family could end up paying, or we have to use a different funding source for this. So it's a psychiatric hospitalization that already occurred
Okay.
and they're discharged.
It's acute, so you don't get the contract
Right.
before, yeah. Yep. Right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Abstain.
Yes. Motion passes. Moving on to contract number 7. The motion is to approve Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Mishawaka, Indiana. Contract as written, same financial category. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Now discussion. Sounds like it might be same.
Same situation
Same.
here. We had a person placed in the Mishawaka inpatient facility. And, yeah, one of those things where we had an emergent need. The person was at Holland Hospital. There were no openings within our contracted providers. And there was one in this Mishawaka facility, so we had them go there.
Is there discussion?
I do have
Mr. Byrd?
a
Yeah.
question. That's a long distance for family to support the individual, if they wanted to do that. Do we not have any other resources like Pine Rest or something else in the Grand Rapids area that would have available beds?
Yeah, so that's our first, we kind of have like a hierarchy, and of course we want to put people in Highland Hospital first. We kind of go down the list from there. Once all of those have been exhausted, then we start looking for some of the more outlying non-contracted ones. What's really nice is Forest View Hospital will be opening up a new facility on M6, and that'll be in the spring, next spring or summer. So that'll be 96 more beds. So knock on
That's
wood,
a lot.
we'll never have to use these other out of region ones once that one opens up, but
It's really good information. Yeah. A lot closer.
Bill, I have a follow-up question. So I guess it's related to Thomas was talking about. These are great distances. It's hard enough going up to Saginaw, but going out to Indiana, another state. And it can be traumatizing for the family and the individual, to be separated that distance, that length of time, potentially an unknown length of time. It's not unusual. I know of people who've been in these hospitals for up to a year before they get a house found for them. And I'm wondering if there's a process for providing supports and services for these individuals, in their home, if that's even a possibility, And I don't know the individual circumstances here, which makes this difficult for me because I understand, it's confidentiality, HIPAA, there's a lot can't be disclosed. But I just know from personal experience, can be a real struggle from the families. They have to go through this. And it would be a whole lot easier, I think, in a lot of cases, if there could be some arrangement for in-home support. Is there such a thing as that, or is that a process we have to work through?
This particular service would not be allowed to be done at home. It's a psychiatric level of care.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a level of care issue, and the lack of availability in Michigan for beds when you need this type of care. So it's unfortunately not a level of care that can be replicated in the home or even in a residential setting. And you can tell by the contract dates, the length of stay was about a week or two, right? So that's what makes it tough. You have an emergent situation, you need to have level of care, the right level of care to stabilize an individual. And you can't replicate this in the home setting.
That leads me to a question. So
Yeah.
Holland Hospital has an inpatient
Sure
psychiatric
do.
unit, correct? How many beds is that unit?
I forget the number of beds. Does anybody know?
Wow.
30-bed unit?
30? Yeah.
And is it at capacity frequently? Is that why we're moving people out?
There's often times where people are waiting for hours or days in ERs for
I
psychiatric
know, I
hospitalization
know that
beds.
very, very well.
And the capacity issues. Now, sometimes the hospitals can refuse to take somebody. They can say, well, this case, we don't think so there's a real issue also with, and it doesn't happen a lot, but they can, especially if you have a developmental disability and you have a psychiatric crisis, it is darn near impossible to get the level of care you need.
They also use, I
Yeah.
do recall them that they also use it for people that have to change their meds because the meds
Mhm.
affecting them the wrong way and not the
Yep.
right way. So
Mhm.
that they put them up there so that they can get adjusted right because it
Stabilize.
stabilizes them so that they don't harm themselves. And then they eventually take them to a place that they're there for like a week or 2 or 3, depending on how severe it is. And then they get sent back home.
Right. So this is a level of care, emergent, already happened. Don't
Right.
want the family or somebody else to get stuck with the bill.
Bill, absolutely. Now it's
So,
just kind of,
And they need to be watched like they're watched 24/7.
sure, provide the nursing care to make
So
sure.
that they know where they're at or what they're, what they're doing, that they're not gonna harm themselves.
But it has provided really good discussion about what's happening in our community too, as far as services are concerned. All right, is there any further discussion? All right, so we'll go to a roll call vote, and this is, pardon me, I thought I motioned to bring it in. Yeah, it did. It's okay, Anna, it's going back and forth, and I really appreciate your stop at the early spot. It could have been a nightmare, so I appreciate it, thanks. We'll go to a roll call vote, and it's the neuropsychiatric hospital contract.
Yes.
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 Abstain.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And the motion passes. Last and finally the conclusion here for our contracts. So thank you for your patience, Bill. The motion is to approve the Holland Cornerstone Drop-In Center contract as written with the financial category that's stated here as well. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Support?
Support.
And is there discussion? Okay, seeing none or no?
Other than just the sources millage, does that have any? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was hoping you would ask. This is one of the only contracts you're seeing
That has millage.
based on the millage funding for next year. This was a drop-in center, something we use millage for. It is a fundamental and core service for folks with mental illness to drop in. And it's coming before you now because they had the landlord increased the rent significantly.
Yeah.
And so if I wouldn't have brought it now, then there was a chance where they would have to find a new location immediately. So it's our millage funding strategy for next year is being presented next month. Kind of, you'll see that in my report. But so this was, Donna, one of the only ones that we did in millage before that we're bringing again now before September for next year.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've done a lot of work with them with their budget. They've been affiliated with a group called Justice and Mental Health Organization, or CMHOC, which supports drop-ins through the state. And we've had them work with them and our staff on appropriate budgets and making sure the drop-in is run because it's consumer run. So this pays for the rent and the salary of the staff to run it. And I will be meeting with the landlord to see if this is going to increase again next year, because if it does, we might have to look at a different location and support them. We're setting a whole new set of outcome measures related to this particular contract, which I can provide more detail at former next board meetings of how many people are utilizing it, quality of life. Does attending a drop-in actually decrease emergency contacts? Real measures to see the efficacy of the drop-in model. So we'll be working with them to those measures, and you'll get regular updates on all of our programs, but especially millage coming up on, is it doing what we intended to do? And does it add value? Just more information down on that.
Thank you, appreciate that.
I do know the facility is already nicely set up for it. I've seen it in the inside before. I do know that they do have people that come through the bus stations that go through there, but it's like across and it was further down, and some of them can't really walk as well because it's a lot, there's some people who physically disabilities, so they walk with walkers, and it takes them sometimes, and sometimes it's harder for them during the winter time. But I do know that they do have people that go there, they have like a slight meeting and they record it, so you might get more information out of that, and they do sign in, so you'll be able to see how much.
Realization. I like that. Yeah. You know, it's this, and the reason why it's through the millage is because it wouldn't be covered by Medicaid dollars or
Correct.
reimbursement, correct?
It's open to the general public that also have a mental illness or self-disclose,
Okay,
right? You know, they self-disclose that, but yeah.
thank you. Mr. Byrd?
Just not related to the contract, but from what Robin's comments were, if a number of the consumers who are using this service at this location are using public transportation, and if that's not convenient, I would encourage our staff to engage with Max Transit, let them know the problem, and see if they can adjust their stop
Yeah.
to make it
They
more
did
accessible
make
for our
it
folks.
a tad bit closer, but it's still like across the street because some of them have a hard time walking.
Mhm.
So I do know most of them are like older than me, so like probably 50s. Some of them are in their like 80s, between 80s and 30s
Hmm.
range from what I've heard from people.
Yep. And we've been engaging them already to fix some of those
Great.
issues.
Just, where is the location of this?
You know where the Social Security office is in Holland off, is it Hastings, I think?
Yeah.
It's right across the
It's
street.
like if you're
Right out
getting,
there.
yeah, it's
Gotcha.
on the right side. It's a like a small corner section.
Gotcha, thank you.
I had the opportunity to visit it not too long ago, and
Excellent. All right. Any further discussion? All right, we will go to a roll call vote. For Holland Cornerstone Drop-In Center. Thank you, Bill. I think we're all done, too. I'm gonna let you sit down.
did they vote?
We didn't vote yet.
Roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Abstain.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion passes. All right, we got through that. Woo, all right. So we're moving on to number 7, which would be the Executive Director's Report by Dr. Michael Brashears.
Oh, we got one more. Unless you,
I was going to,
unless you're doing it.
LRE board appointments.
we can do that, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to get through the contracts. We'll do the LRA board appointments. So suggested motion is to appoint Dr. Richard Canston and appoint Dave Parnan to represent the Community Mental Health of Ottawa County on Lakeshore Regional Entity Board of Directors. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, the thing I celebrated early was the Executive Director's Report, number 7.
I'll try to, thank you for, well, Mr. Parnham was, by the way, full agreement to be appointed to the LRE board. He wasn't here today, but he sent an email saying, since I'm not there, you can appoint me.
Got a grandchild's
Yeah,
birthday.
so if you miss a meeting, you're on a committee. There you go.
That's the punishment.
Things, I intend to go through my report and then I have another action item. At the state level, and it's on the screen there. On the state level, the conflict-free access and planning has been placed on hold by the state. As you remember, we had the Board Association come in and give us feedback on it. We provided regular updates on this issue. We're not exactly sure the process of when it might come back up, but apparently all of the advocacy and feedback to the state has got them to rethink how they were thinking of rolling out conflict-free access and planning. And so just to know, more news to come. What usually happens is they say, we're going to delay the implementation, and then several months later say, here's what we're going to do, and we start the advocacy all over again, and we'll see what happens. But this issue's been kicked down the road for several years. So that is on hold. Regional entity, we are right now, as a member of the Lakeshore Regional Entity, and just to remind the board and the public, the regional entity is the body or the organization that controls our Medicaid funding from the state. It goes from the state to the regional entity to us. We are members of the Lakeshore Regional Entity, us, Allegan, Network 180, Muskegon, and then 3 counties called West Michigan CMH. And we make up the membership of the Lakeshore Regional Entity, which you just appointed Mr. Parnham to be on the board for. We have now 3 seats, yay, on that board. And it controls over $60 million of our budget. And we're the members, right? So it's an interesting relationship. And so what I've done is I've completed a key document review of the operating agreement, the bylaws, the strategic plan, and the contract requirements that we have with the Lakeshore Regional Entity. And I'll be providing a summary of my analysis on that relationship between us and the regional entity and all the obligations therein in September. We're in the middle right now of negotiating a contract with the regional entity, how we're going to manage the regional entity, how the money comes to each of the members. And I've actually been working with our corporate counsel to review the draft of that contract. We've been operating under a contract with the regional entity since 2021. They just keep adding amendments and kicking it down the can, can down the road to get to a new contract. But the state of Michigan has informed our region, which is the Lakeshore Regional Entity, that we shall have a contract with them and its members by the end of this fiscal year. They're not going to allow amendments to continue past this year. So I'm going to be working with corporate counsel and I'll bring back to this board once we have something to look at and approve. But if I wouldn't have done this analysis, I wouldn't have really understood all of the nuances to what we're doing in this region. And I would tell you, since I've been the director over the last decade, the amount of requirements has quadrupled ×4. And the burden on our staff for compliance alone, I've estimated is like 6 times more than it was 10 years ago when it first formed. So we are working with our partners at the regional entity, but it's a very labor intensive. It's taking 35% of my time per week just to keep up with regional entity activities and requirements. And so we're looking at how we're going to manage that. But I just wanted to update that we're obviously active participants, and I'm doing my due diligence to understand this relationship with the region. And I don't think the public really knows what it is and why it's necessary. And so in one of my educational sessions, we will go through that. I've been engaged in a specialized residential rate setting initiative. I had the honor of meeting with residential providers, and these are specialized residential homes that we have people in. I met on the 19th, and I proposed a rate kind of model of how we could calculate our rates to what we would pay them per day. It's the second time I put together a model for the group to look at. And I think that, Stephen, you were on the call, you were there. And it's clear that we're still not clear as a system of the true cost of residential care and what residential providers are facing. For instance, we had a robust conversation. It was pretty clear that we're still not looking at the administrative and clinical oversight that residential providers have to do of our residents in specialized residential homes, and that's never factored into the cost. So even though I'm getting closer to, are we paying enough to pay the staff and kind of do the basic services, we're not there yet on a model that truly validates the true cost of care. And there are some other things we have to look into, which I'm going to do. The development and implementation of a residential level of staff support and assessment tool. We're not utilizing currently an active tool that measures the measure of need of somebody and the amount of staff they would need and the costing. And once I do that, this is going to end up applying to a lot of things like CLS in the home or other forms of community living supports and personal care in other settings. So I'm starting with residential because it's 1/3 of our expenditures, and try to right size that and get the logic on that. And then we're going to have to apply it out to other forms of, as Stephen said earlier, supports in the homes. So we also have to develop better utilization standards to ensure that the consumer is in the right level of care and in the least restrictive environments. So we're going to have staff develop tighter and more streamlined processes on utilization management standards to ensure people are in the right level of care. Quality of life measures, we need to adapt that. Does the residential service matter? Are their lives better? If we're not measuring quality of life, what's the point? So we're going to have to look at that. And the development of additional residential options through our network. You just saw all these contracts. There are no places. I'm aware of a situation that somebody's been in jail for 2 weeks because there isn't a placement. It's not one of our clients, but we're helping, right? There are no places to put people to go. And so some people end up having to stay in hospital settings, jails, and other places because there are no residential options growing, and they're not even funded. So we got to start working on those issues now. So I'm giving you an update because I started this as an interim and I declared it an emergency, and we're going through a step-by-step process and evaluating what our rates are and the variables associated with it. And the more I do, the more of an onion peels out, and it ends up being related to other services like CLS, community living supports, or personal care in other settings. And so there's a one-to-one relationship between those things. So I don't intend to just meet with specialized residential providers and stop. This will be the basis of replicating our analysis in all these different ways we're providing community living supports and personal care. And I'm going to have the providers help me develop other CLS options or other providers for CLS. Our residential providers may have staff that could be contracted out to assist people in the home. So we're going to have to start utilizing our residential providers as a source too, so families can pick someone to do CLS in the home. Because what you're going to hear in a moment is that that's a problem. The lack of availability of CLS community living support providers in our probably state, but definitely in our county. See where I'm at. Youth to adult transition. I have started a process. I'm meeting with the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Division. I had a first meeting last week, and we're going through a process, kind of like a center of excellence development model of who are we serving, how are we serving them? And I have told them, and we are working together under the philosophy that we do provide services for people to 18 to 26, regardless if they're getting services in the ISD. We can't replicate that service, we can't supplant it, but there's all kinds of other services that we could be providing people that are going to the ISD 18 to 26. And then our philosophical position in meeting with the group is that we have to start youth to adult transitions in any system from 16. So you should have at least a period of time where you're not waiting until someone turns 18 and then figure out they fall off the service cliff because now they're an adult. So our philosophical principle in that division is, and then across the board will be, we start youth to adult transition at the age 16. So we have to operationalize that and look at the impact of that. Right now, it happens in some areas, but not in others. So that's an area that we're looking at. Board education series, they're gonna happen. I had to change the one on the 30th because it's right before Labor Day weekend. None of you will be around. So I'm going to be starting on 9/6, community education series on Fridays at noon. If you can't attend, they will be recorded. There will be handouts. And the idea is going to happen at James Street. Anybody's invited, 12 to 1. And I'll be going through the various funding sources and the obligations associated with them. Medicaid services and funding, state and local general fund and our obligations. CCBHC, what is it? What are our obligations? What's the funding? How do we use it? Millage, who determines how we've been spending it? What are the outcomes? What are we trying to do? Grants, the same thing. So these will end up being rotating throughout the year and available once we start getting good at them for anybody to see online or anywhere else and ask questions. Yes, sir.
Well, the first meeting on September 6th, is this going to go in succession, starting with Medicaid down the list, or is there a different one we're going to start on?
It's going to start with that one.
Okay.
I can change it if you want.
No, I'm just curious. And then is one of the big focuses of that going to be going over the Medicaid provider manual? Is that a part of it?
Yeah, well, the Medicaid provider manual is 2,000 pages.
Mm-hmm.
There's
have to hit the
over
highlight.
700 things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, though, we'll have what are the services in the Medicaid manual that are attached? What are the services that are attached to each funding source and where can you find them? Will be part of it.
Okay.
So we'll have a hyperlink to the manual and it'll give you a page range, right? Eventually with our contracts, you'll see the same thing. In our contracts, it will say, this is the Medicaid service. Click here, you can actually read the whole thing. Right?
Okay.
So yeah, there'll be hyperlinks.
If I could ask a question, I've been
Yeah.
trying to figure out where to interject this.
Yeah.
The last time I read the LRE contract several months ago, what stuck in my mind was there was a statement, if I'm correct, that said that there is no guarantee of entitlement to services for Medicaid. Now, that's in stark contrast to what we've always assumed and been told, that if you are medically eligible for Medicaid, you are entitled to Medicaid services appropriate to your need. And as you're reviewing the LRE contract, could you put that as a red flag to investigate? Make sure that statement is very clearly defined, that there is an expectation and an entitlement for appropriate Medicaid services if you are an eligible Medicaid recipient.
Yeah, I
And that-
wouldn't,
That flows through to the Medicaid Providers Manual. Has the state changed
that's right.
that?
They have not, and I will not sign a contract that says that. That there's not, it's an entitlement.
Yep.
And if you meet medical necessity, we shall serve. Regardless of funding. We shall, we have to. So I won't be signing any contract that says that that's not true. But I'll add that to our red flag list.
Right.
So in the millage, I will be presenting at the September board meeting my proposed millage fund oversight and coordination model based on the restructuring principles I sent to you last board meeting. Okay. And I'll be sending out information on that before the meeting to CMH board members, CMH staff, leadership in the community. So it'll be on the website. It'll also be sent out via email of how I'm envisioning the structure. And then in September, you get to say, I like that, or change it or not. But it'll provide us a way once and for all to have oversight over the millage fund that includes the full board and community input into it. And it'll show outcomes and the validity of why we're making those choices and the rules and principles of how we're making decisions and how long a contract should be. It's my belief that millage was never meant to be a permanent funding source for a particular program for over a decade. Right? So we're looking at how we do that and how that looks. So that will come in September, but you'll get information before then via the email and various other avenues. I had the pleasure of going to Compassionate Heart Ministries on the 6th. And even though I sat there for 3 hours and listened to a lot of robust dialogue, it was a pleasure. It was nice to see the community come and be engaged in a discussion with the CMH system. I think that, was I still in from them? I forget, Don. Oh, no, I just was not
No,
right.
You were appointed.
But I had the pleasure of meeting with over 40 people, standing room only, with families, consumers that were very vocal during the meeting, which was fun, and their families. And here are some of the themes I heard. CLS authorization process is unclear and inconsistent. CMH is denying service to anyone who is receiving services from the ISD. Lack of respite in CLS providers. Lack of clarity related to CMH access standards. Lack of responsiveness and customer service from CMH staff. Lack of CMH assistance to keep consumers in their own homes with supports. Lack of community education on what services CMHs provide. Now, I will tell you that they were very complimentary too, as well, that,
Goes all together.
what's that?
It kind of goes all together. in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and so I can't verify any of the individual, I wasn't in a position to say, tell me your specific thing and go through it. But this is a theme that we have to address in our strategic planning because staff are really working hard. And there are definitely examples where this is not the case. But I've heard the themes enough where it has to be on our strategic planning to investigate. It's kind of like verify the information and look at our organizational system. And I'm going to tell you how I'm going to do that in a moment. But I will tell you, it was a very, the issues sound like they were like negative, but it was not presented in a negative way. It was, we were having a dialogue back and forth. And I don't know if Donna wants to, because she was there. I felt it was an engaging conversation and hopefully those individuals felt heard. So.
Yeah, I would say that's what the message I heard, that for the first time in a long time, somebody was listening to them. And I've been very honest to say that a year and a half ago, that's why I applied to be on this board, because I've been listening to these parents, because I am one of those parents who's been screaming for a long time, help us, and felt very unheard. And so I applied to try to be that voice for the other parents that I do life with on a regular basis to finally just help us because we feel like we're drowning. And I just want to thank you for taking 3 hours that night to just listen.
I attended that meeting too. And the thing that really struck me, I think it's important to highlight, is the importance of independent facilitators and supports brokers. From the comments I was hearing from a lot of the parents there, that was, I think, where they were really struggling. And if they'd had that assistance, it'd make their lives for their kids a whole lot easier.
Yeah. But, you know, it's the thing we want to do often and have more of us do it. And so we'll be creating opportunities for that. Lastly, on this report, before I get to my other survey, so we keep you going here, is over the last 90 days, I've been completing an initial systems look. As interim, I gathered some information, which you're going to see the results of in terms of SWOT analysis, but I've also been engaged in a very specific 4-step model that I'm utilizing to evaluate the system. And I just wanted to quickly tell you what it is. So the first thing I've been doing is a foundational source review, reviewing every key document, contract, policy, procedure, regulation that says what we're obligated to do. I've completed my initial look at that. So I have a firm understanding contractually what we're obligated to do. So that's the what do we do? Like, what are we supposed to do? The second phase, as I'm starting now, is looking at our outcome review and a structural review. And what does that mean? Based on what we're obligated to do, I'm saying, why do we do it? What are our desired outcomes of doing this service besides we're contracted to do it? What are we looking for in terms of end products on outcomes for increase in quality of life? It shouldn't be we're just doing the service because we're contracted to do it. And as long as we do it, that's good enough. That's not a center of excellence model. And we will be engaged in center of excellence development. So I'll be looking at that, meeting with my team, getting other input from you and others of what are our benchmarks for excellence. It's my goal that within 5 years, Ottawa CMH will be a center of excellence for public mental health system in the state. It takes that long to get to that level. I will be defining what a center of excellence means over the next several months in many venues. We have the staff to do it. We have the motivation to do it. We just need to drive towards excellence. We have a lot of good folks that are working for us, working very hard. We just have to have a direction and some expectations that help push it along. We're not working from a place of weakness, but strength. So this step is going to be important. What do we really want? A structural review is looking at the organizational structure to determine what we have right now in terms of how we structured, how much staff we have, roles and responsibilities. That's the how. What do we do? Why do we do it? How are we doing it? What structures do we have? Is there enough infrastructure to meet our obligations? The answer is kinda. We are meeting all of our requirements, but we're not structured enough. We've had to cut. In 2015, we cut 1/3 of the CMH workforce. 1/3. We've never recovered. We've done excellent in the spite of that realistic thing that happened. I'm amazed of how well the staff does. We're going to keep reviewing it to say, what do we need to add, change, redesign so that we can become a center of excellence? And then finally is the process of how do we do it? You have the structure. So how and when, that's a review of the organizational processes, operational guidelines, assessment and measurement tools and procedures. So right now I finished in my review A, and that's why I'm able to do those educational talks about all of the funding sources and intelligently talk about what are we obligated to do, because I completed that review. So now we're looking at our structure and what do we need to meet the needs of the community and become a center of excellence. There's 2 themes: ensuring the community and community mental health and becoming a center of excellence is going to guide our thinking strategically. Any questions on that?
I'd just like to make a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, strikes me that you're a consumer-oriented visionary, and that's very inspiring. I want to thank you for that. And not, I guess the contrast to that would be a conflict or a wonky bureaucrat. And I think that would be the last thing we need. So I just want to compliment you on what you're doing.
I do have a quick question.
Mhm.
On the youth and adult transition,
Mhm.
because it says 18 to 26, you're saying it's 16?
There's two parts. One is, right now, we have a whole group of people that are 18 to 26 on the developmental disability side that we're saying, sometimes it's hard for us to serve you because you're already getting services from the school. And I'm saying we can walk alongside of that. Then there's everybody else, right, that might be under 18.
This
We
is
got a plan.
recently,
Right.
like, added, right?
Correct.
So like for the people who weren't in it when it should have been there earlier, in my opinion, because there's a lot of people, like when I was in high school, that would have probably used it because they just get falled off. They don't get the help they needed when they're not, and now they're too old for it.
Yeah, we're just trying to ensure that people that are getting services and family service under 18 have a nice transition plan of what they're going to get after they turn 18. And so this is to ensure that, which is actually in the mental health code.
And then what happens once they go past it, but they don't still meet the expectation?
Well, if they don't meet eligibility, then we'd have to meet with them and say, what can we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I'm ready to move on unless you.
Yeah, consumer-oriented visionary. I like that
Hmm.
title. Or
Yeah,
descriptor.
I will say that I appreciate that, but I'm also one that knows that we have the staff and the infrastructure to turn into a center of excellence,
It's because you see.
right? And so there's both of that.
Exciting.
And they're not, it's not A or B, has to be B. We have some good folks working for us. We really do. So we can excel in certain areas once we structure a certain way. This staff has been working without the necessary resources to excel in the way that I'm talking about. They've done an amazing job under very difficult conditions. And so we're going to be looking at that and how to improve it. They're eager. Folks I talk to, eager to do more. Just give me the resources. So what I'd like to do is get to the survey results, if that's okay,
Yep, let's go.
so that you're not here till 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, we got a noon too.
It's
Yeah.
10:56.
Yeah, we're good. We're
Yep,
good.
we're
All right.
good. Okay.
All right. All right. Can I use this, you think? All right. So when I came, I said I would be doing my own kind of SWOT analysis that will help me gain information on some key variables within the organization and how we're perceived. So, hey, it works. Can I read it though? Okay, so what this did is I created a questionnaire or a survey tool, and I administered it to the board of directors, the leadership group at CMH, and all staff. And I did it over a time frame of June and July. As remember, I was the interim director, and I said, this is what I was going to do. I was going to gather some information to inform me on some key areas. Our response rates were, the board of directors was at 81%, so 9 out of 11 people filled it out. Our leadership group was at 100%. It was kind of a recommendate. But they did it, you know. The all staff we had 63 out of 169 responses, of 38%, which statistically is significant. It's okay. It means it meets the threshold or has enough power. So when I'm looking at the results, it's valid. If you have something that's like much lower percentage, like 10%, less than 10%, then statistically it's not a valid measure. So that was a valid measure. So what were the questions? And they were different. They were worded a little different besides the group. You know, please list the 3 greatest strengths of your department or service line. This is the one for the staff. Strengths are defined as, and you can see there. Oh, I lost it. I gotcha. Are we good now? It's okay. I'll go back. Yeah. So then there were weaknesses. Please list 3 areas of improvement that is needed in your department. This was the staff one. What are the opportunities that you see for growth or other opportunities and threats? what are the external, internal threats that put your department or service line at risk? And then there was a morale question of between 1 and 10, how would you rate morale? So it's a traditional SWOT analysis. I will tell you, the data was gathered anonymously. People did not have to disclose who they were. I'm the only one that looked at the results, the data, the raw data, and which if I would ever do it again, it would have made more an easier way to do it because all of the responses were narrative. So I had to read over 400 different answers for each thing and then come up with themes. So I learned a little bit about how to construct these in the future.
Was AI too.
Yeah, well, AI, you know. So when you look at the leadership and staff, I put the all staff and leadership results summary together because there were some differences, but the themes were the same. So what were the strengths? Teamwork, staff longevity, consumer focus. So our staff and leadership group said there are a lot more of these, but overwhelmingly, these were the three that bubbled up in one form of another. That our staff and leadership at CMH felt like there's good teamwork. There's a lot of staff longevity. People have been here for a while, which is a good thing. And then consumer focused is the guide. What was the weaknesses? Space, 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 space. That was the number one item in all of the responses. It was mentioned in 90% of all the responses is that we have a lack of space to actually carry out the obligated services that we're contracted to do. You've heard me bring it up over and over again, but this is raised to the top, and we're going to have a strategic plan around this pretty quickly. Capacity and caseload size. Caseload size meaning if we're directly operating something, my caseload's too high. Capacity, we don't have enough network providers to meet our obligation. The staff and leadership group in one form or another brought that to the top. Capacity and caseload size was a major identified weakness. Internal communication and a lack of clear organizational processes and guidelines. I'll tell you, a lot of that's due to over 20,000 regulations. And so we have to develop a process to address every one of those. And you need a degree from MIT to figure out which process flow you're in at one given time in the organization. But that's an area we're going to have to look at, how we're communicating internally, externally, and our process. That's that second phase in my process I told you. It's part of the process review. It's the fourth phase, actually. And from a lack of CLS and residential service providers. And people are going to be like, yeah, Michael, you just wrote this because that's what you want. There's actually 50 or 60 responses that say that. What are the opportunities? Get a new electronic health record. That was an opportunity, the staff saying, we have an opportunity to change, right? Training, best practices and evidence-based practices. Increase collaboration with community stakeholders and providers. That's my phrase, but the theme was present. Like we need to increase our collaboration with people outside of the organization and bring the voices inside. That was from a majority of folks that filled this out. What are the threats? Lack of knowledge of the CMH board and county commissioners related to CMH requirements and services and the political climate. This is something that was reported by the staff as over and over again as a potential threat. Staff burnout was high on the list, probably the top one, actually. Our threat is, even though we've had staff working a long time and they have good teamwork, it's due to the lack of resources, caseload size, and space, burnout. So I'll have to look at what our actual turnover rate is as a result of those comments and how we deal with staff burnout. And there's been a lot of things we've done through our grants and millage, believe it or not, to help staff deal with this that we'll provide a summary of. But that was a major threat listed. And then a lack of funding. And what I mean by that, it wasn't like, hey, it's a lack of funding to go beyond what we're currently doing. Like more Medicaid is needed so we can expand. So it wasn't like they're saying we don't have enough money per se, because we have 70 something, we have a lot of millions of dollars. It's like if you want to if we want to move the needle, we're going to have to do more than we're currently doing to reach out more. And so that was identified by leadership and staff are the themes. Any questions on those before I move on? Okay. So the morale level, all staff and leadership group morale level, the all staff averaged at 6.9 out of 10. So the majority of folks were in the 7, the mode, if you remember statistics, was like a 7. And then we had some outliers, some that were 10s and some that were 2s. But the actual average between 1 and 10, our staff rated morale internally as a 6.29. As a psychologist and one that does statistics, I will tell you that you go plus or minus 1 each way. So it really, to me, is saying that morale is about 5.5 for a lot of people and 7.5 for some folks, depending where you are. But because the data was corrected anonymously, I can't pinpoint which area, which group had different levels of morale. The leadership group put morale at overall at 6.83 as the average. And again, you can go plus or minus of that. Those ratings and morale surprise you or raise any questions, or did you think would you have thought it would have been higher or lower? I'll ask the group.
I think given your SWOT analysis, I think that's actually a little higher than what I'd anticipate.
Yeah. That's what my thought was.
Same.
Yeah. I very much appreciated the honesty that the staff took at this. But yeah, I thought it was a little higher than I would have expected based on some of the other responses. Okay, so let's look at the board. I asked you kind of similar questions. What are some strengths? And again, I'm summarizing and paraphrasing, and I'm taking the top 3 or 4 of each one. But the board took this request for information seriously. I did not feel like, okay, whatever. I mean, there was a lot of feedback. And some of you weren't on the board yet when we did this. So that's why you weren't included in it. So strong financial footing that, you had that discussion with Amy earlier. What's healthy? We're in the healthy range. So like we seem to be okay from where we're at. We're not in the red. So we have a strong financial footing. I'm paraphrasing. There were many different ways of saying that. Staff expertise and longevity. This board identified that we have a lot of staff that are content experts in a lot of different things, and they appear to know their areas very well. And that was on at least 60% in one form of another of your responses. I think it had desire to serve the community. That you said, look, there's a desire for us to serve the community. How we do it is a different story, but there's a desire there. So what were the weaknesses that the top 4 kind of summarized? Lack of community awareness related to CMH services and eligibility. Tension between CMH board members and the lack of trust and communication from staff was identified. Lack of support for families and mental health or IDD children or young adults. Like, what are we really doing to help those families? And a lack of CLS and residential services providers, and I'm paraphrasing in one way or another. So when you look at your responses, it wasn't like somebody wrote that verbatim the way I wrote it. It's the themes that came out of it. Opportunities, expansion of services utilizing millage and CCBH funding, several of you put. Management and oversight of the millage funds was an opportunity. Increased coordination with community stakeholders and families was a huge opportunity. And oftentimes your opportunities are directly related to your weaknesses. They're almost like you'd flip, this is how now that you flip it, right? And you kind of go, all right, it's that, and now that's the opportunity. What's the threat? This is what you all said, paraphrasing, political climate within the county and CMH. Lack of strategic planning and outcome measurement from us to you. Lack of adequate provider network were the main 3 threats that came out in that. And I got to tell you, when I went through this, especially when I looked, at some of the opportunities and the strengths, I felt a little bit like, especially with the staff and leadership one, optimistic that we, regardless of what we're perceiving as a threat, our strengths, if maximized, sorry, my phone's ringing, can help us get over some of these, right? But that's what was reported, and I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do with it. So what was your morale rating? I asked you two things. How do you, your vision or your opinion of what you think the staff morale is, and then what you think the morale among yourselves are. And the results were 5.44 out of 10 on your perception of what you think the staff's morale is. Again, there's no objective measurement that was taken. There wasn't like you got to poll people. This was a subjective opinion based on your experience and what you're hearing or thinking. And so it was at about half. And then with the board itself, in your opinion, what is the overall level of morale you have observed related to CMH board? And you rated yourselves, it's a 7.3 plus minus 1. It's a 7.33. So it tells me that when I look at morale questions at other boards, usually you get about 8 is usually the number you get. You're close to feeling a little bit more optimistic among yourselves about yourselves. That's the psychologist in me. I apologize. Right? But it's not far off of what you usually get. And I bet you if I would have asked you it's the timing, like a year and a half ago, I don't know what the number would have been. So it's at the time of asking, right? And it's how you view in yourself. So any discussion you'd like to have on what I just said, I'm open to it. Yeah.
Michael, the board evaluation of threats. I don't remember what I answered for that, but I'm struck that, to me, one of the biggest threats we have is that we're not in control of our funding stream.
Correct.
It all flows downstream, and it starts in Washington with a CMS that can have arbitrary and capricious restrictions placed on us. It flows through the state, through DHS or DHS, whatever
Yeah.
their acronym
Them.
is. Them. And then it flows through the region, and then it finally gets to us. And we're really not in control of our financial stability. We take what comes down to us, and we try to make the best of it.
Yeah, we have all the obligation, partial risk financially, and no control of the dollar amount. And how many bites of the apple happen before they get to the consumer? Yeah, yeah. Other observations, thoughts, or discussion related to this?
Well, I was wondering if the morale is a reflection, you said it seems to be a little higher than anticipated for both the board members and staff. And I'm wondering if that's a reflection of people are feeling optimistic or encouraged the direction we seem to be going. And maybe it's held back a little bit by reflection on where we've been historically. And maybe that's some of the drag on the morale.
Mhm.
Do you do employee satisfaction surveys annually then? Or
I
you
don't
plan
know.
on doing that?
No,
No.
not. The county does, but we don't.
Separately? Just be curious after, like new
Sure.
leadership, year later, what
Yeah.
is that looking like?
Absolutely.
So these numbers are by the staff, what they think versus ours, but have you thought of also adding the people?
You mean the,
Like
Consumer
like the
satisfaction.
consumer, the staff, and then us. and
yeah,
then
I did
comparing.
not ask the consumers to fill this out,
Yeah.
but that's something definitely to do in the future.
Because that would give you more of a broad spectrum on
Mhm.
where it needs more than others and
Mhm.
how they see it. Because that's also listening to the people at the same time. So you
Absolutely.
can change what needs to be changed.
Yep.
That'd be excellent for our strategic plan going forward on this millage funding. I mean, we really need to know what to do with that money, and we need to know what
Sure.
the community wants us to do with it.
Right.
Just going back to morale, just some of my thoughts on that. I think it'd be interesting even to ask the board again, how is morale going now? Because, and this might just be me personally, but I feel like our board is coalescing together. And I feel like our morale is up in the last couple of months, even, and so as a
Yep.
compliment to you, I think it's been very helpful to have you here and educating us. And I think for me personally, it's been a boost to board morale. So I would be even curious to see, because I think that number would be higher now than it was when you measured it.
Agree.
So what I intend to do with this is, okay, we have to develop a strategic planning process to address those findings and the results of my other systems look stuff together. So, so you collect information and it's like, well, now what? That was nice. You can do anything about it? So there's going to be some key things I pull from that and from my other systems look when I'm evaluating our structure to have recommendations on the development of an actual strategic plan instead of a strategic priorities, and put them in, a situation where we're continuously monitoring them. So the information that was provided, I mean, a lot of it is based on observation too, like the space issue and things like that. How we can come together, like the creation of the subcommittees and our board is another way to kind of increase organizational excellence and increase trust, right? Because for whatever reason, there's always a natural tension between boards and staff and systems. I'm optimistic that we all want the same things. What's best for the person served. And I have been so optimistic when I walk around CMH and seeing the people that are doing the work, that's their main focus when I talk to them, when I see them. And now I have to make sure they have the organizational structures and the resource to move the needle and to let the board feel comfortable with where we're going. And so, it's developing a strategic planning process that I'm going to propose to the board so that we're developing a strategic plan and moving forward. And I tend to have the kind of components of the plan developed in September for us to look, but then really actually begin the process and get part of it within 90 days. I don't want to waste time. So that means we have to work a little bit harder. So we'll get the committee structures in place. We'll kind of get our strategic objectives and priorities, and we'll kind of work together in coming up with a strategic plan within 90 days is what I'm hoping to do.
Keep us on track here for the 90 days.
Yeah, well, I'll have Anna keep me on track to keep you on track. But yeah, we'll definitely do that. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with the survey result, but I want you to see how it blends into the other evaluation I've been doing, like foundational source. We can't answer strategic planning until we're clear what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it and what levels of excellence we want to accomplish it. Or it's just like, stay compliant.
No,
I
I was
wanna do
writing
that.
down center of excellence. You want
Yes.
to become a center of excellence. And so, it's like when you're outcomes driven, as you're discussing here, having a plan, strategic plan in place, that's how you measure, that's how you point people in that direction. So, no,
Yeah,
outstanding.
and so that concludes my report and my presentation. Any questions I can answer?
I do have one comment, Michael. You've used the term several times today. Are we making people's lives better? And I remember a number of years ago, we were discussing the reporting requirements for, at the time, D8, was it department, whatever the acronym was
Right.
for the regulator at the time. And
Big brother.
yeah, how many phone calls did you get that went unanswered in a
Right.
minute and a half? How long did it take to schedule the first appointment?
Yeah.
Yada, yada. And nobody ever asked, did we make your life better?
Right.
And that's a metric that is difficult to ascertain, but it's an important one for us to measure. And I'm glad to hear you asking that question, because we're not going to hear it from Lansing. They're not going to ask us, did you make the lives better of the people in Ottawa County? They have other criteria they make us report on. So to the extent that that remains a focus for you.
Yeah,
thank
and you know, what are the outcomes that matter?
Consumer-oriented visionary.
Mhm.
Right.
I see your humble face look back, but it's true.
But the reality is, you know, what I want this board to hear is we have a good foundation to accomplish this. My initial 90-day kind of thing wasn't, oh my goodness. Now, are other processes we have to improve? You bet. Can we get better? You bet. We have to make sure of that. But I'm proud to report that the staff are eager and willing to work as hard as we can, but we do have to address some issues. Space, the electronic medical record, all of these things are real things that actually equates to quality of life improvements for our residents, in our consumers. And so, you know, I feel blessed that we can start this process with the group I have. And I want that to be loud and clear to both staff and the board, is that we can move from a place of a good base and improve. This is a performance and quality improvement initiative, not because of fundamentally severe weaknesses or deficits. We're doing the best we can. We have ways, things we can improve. No bet. No bet. You know, we can do that. But I want that to be the message that's heard with this too. That you may have a morale of 5, but people want it to be 9. You know, they don't want it to be like oppositional and defiant and all that stuff and tension everywhere. But just last week, I was trying to figure out where do we put a new employee? So we're going to, you know, how do we deal with that within the county structure? And so I feel emboldened and energetic to work with the group we have to make the necessary changes to get to where the consumers and public want us to be. So it was good exercise to do, that's what I'm saying.
Good news is the session, the work session that's following this meeting, we'll be talking about probably space, you know, and
Good.
and availability.
You got a
So
whole
the
list.
Usage survey, yes, or assessment. So, okay,
Right,
next on
thank
the
you.
agenda, thank you very much, is old business, which we have none. And then number 10 was general information, comments and meetings attended. I guess it would have been a different number, but there's nothing there. We have any general information, comments and meetings attended that we want to talk about? Being none, I'm going to move on to public comment. It's our second go at public comment. If you're interested in coming, hi. Come up. Hi there.
Krista Mason, Residence Hope. I'm going to speak quickly if you don't mind, because I got a few things I'd like to address. First of all, thank you for the robust conversation around parity of access for psychiatric services. I want to share with you, this is a part of the rhythm of providers, especially who are more medically complex. They're often then out of necessity referred to Indiana. And I will share with you, we had an individual come back from a hospitalization that we reported injury all over his body. So I recognize the hard decision that you have in front of you in improving contracts, but we have to figure out a better system to address this inevitable part of life for the folks that we serve. Secondly, I want to applaud Dr. Bashir's for engaging the provider network in the way that he has around rates and discussions. I'll share with you that as a provider, director of organization, sit and listen to Amy's report, I'd love to hear that you're in a good financial position. We are not. I cannot give a report like that to my board because the services that we are provided are not being funded. Fortunately, we live in about the most charitably generous community that I know of. For that reason, Benjamin's Hope is a healthy organization, but the importance of looking at, especially the administrative burdens, you have them, we have them. we can barely keep our heads above water. So I just want to share with you that I'm thankful for the arduous work that's going on, and I'm hopeful. I think a number of providers would say they feel hopeful for the first time in a long time. But please recognize that I don't get to give a report like this to my board.
Question. From, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Oh, we have a
I'm,
question?
I'm sorry, can I ask you a question? Can you just clarify, I think I missed what you said when you were saying, so you have you're serving an IDD population, and then when you need them to go to the hospital, can you just talk about, I missed some of your language that you
Right,
used.
right. So what I was
Parity.
referring to is when there's a psychiatric crisis that requires inpatient services, the CMH recommendation is that we go to the emergency room. From the emergency room, a bed is sought in an inpatient psychiatric hospital. And nobody wants us because we don't have adequate funding and we're complex, we're IDD, right? So we can't get access to the good beds that are available in our community. I'm encouraged by what Bill shared about Forest View. Maybe that will change, but there can be beds open at Holland Hospital, Pine Rest. We can't access them.
Because of the IDD diagnoses
Mhm.
and
It won't be
Medicaid
stayed that
reimbursement.
way, but, you know, the doors
That-
fly open from, you know, occasionally my staff need these beds. They are not IDD and the door flies open for them, which I'm grateful for, not for the people I serve.
Wonder if there's a workshop opportunity with our health systems.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So sad. Okay.
And I'm with Harbor House Ministries, and I would reiterate a lot of what Krista has said. I appreciate your healthy financial situation. I also cannot give that report to my board. And I am so appreciative, and I know where we're going, and that's great. I appreciate Dr. Bashir's work with the specialized residential. I also appreciate Dr. Bashir's reaching out as providers, because we probably more so. I meet families that are in crisis situations. Just for those board members that aren't aware, we serve adults that have profound medical need inside of a development. So I meet families that are providing full care for individuals, and they're in their
Oh, my goodness.
but there isn't a service available, and I have to be honest, the list of people waiting for services,
That's what I'm afraid of.
a new family coming on board is probably gonna wait 5 to 10. And so, I am happy as an organization to work with CMHOC. How do we reduce the dependence on the residential system and able to serve people in there? Believe that there's a path to that. But as a provider right now, I'm trying to keep my head above water. Angling to make my payroll. So, you know, you got to put out the fire that's in front of you. So I want to compliment the work of Dr. Bashir's, but I also want to compliment you as a board, because I can see you're trying to understand the situation and really get at it. I echo that there is all of the elements are in place to be a center of excellence. One of the wonderful things about being a provider in Ottawa County, as Krista spoke to, it is a county where the citizens really do tend to believe shoulders together. And so because of that, you know, we're able to sustain and continue. But there is a ceiling, and we're there. So I appreciate, like I said, your understanding or your work to understand, and I appreciate your healthy position. But please, I also loved Chairperson Crosby that you said, you know, surplus can be a difficult word to hear, and I would say as consumers and providers, it's a difficult word for us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any further public comment? Hi, Denise.
I'm Denise House, Holland Township. I just wanted to say I attended the meeting at CMHOC, and I'm very hopeful. I'm hoping that things will change and things will improve. As far as quality of life, I noticed that too at the beginning of the meeting, and I'm thinking, okay, how is our quality of life? You know, for our son, for our daughter, for me. Because I've worked 40 hours this week already. I'm here, and then after this, I need to help Matthew with meal planning and take him grocery shopping and all that, and that's probably a 3-hour task because his processing speed is very, very low. And I gotta try get him to walk. You know, Michaela, things just aren't good. And me, I'm tired. I have my 60th birthday within this. I'm thinking, I can't keep doing this at this pace. Because like for me too, I probably have to go to urgent care today. Took a good fall and hurt my finger and my knee and my shoulder. So I'm trying to figure out how to finagle that into my day too. Talking about inpatient services. Michaela was hospitalized several years ago when she went from jail where they housed her for 66 days because there was no place to put her. And then she went to a home in Muskegon, which was a disaster. That lasted less than 10 days. She ended up in a crisis home in Muskegon. And then from there, she went to a psych hospital. Psych hospital didn't recognize her as being IDD. So I got a call in the middle of the night that they found her naked in the guy's room. And she ended up, it was just a nightmare. And then finally, after that point, they put a one-on-one with her. But I'm horrified. I never want to go through that experience again. I'm not sure I trust any psych hospitals. But, you know, just thinking of our quality of life. I'm tired. I'm weary. To spend 3 hours trying to help Matthew with his groceries and his meal plan, and then have to do it again next week. You know, I think of your meeting on September 6th. Like, yep, maybe I could sneak into that a little bit, but then I have to take Matthew to a nutritionist appointment, and then I have to come back to CMH. And hopefully we could manage all that, and we don't have any other appointments that day. But I'm just hopeful. I will tell you that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Rosalie.
It's music.
I mean, right?
Been energy before. I myself lived in crisis survival mode all my daughter's life too. When we went through that experience of discharge, we can't help you, you know, and then Ottawa County, she didn't belong here in Ottawa County. And I think of all that resource and funding going out of county for poor quality negligent care, even from a psychiatric hospital, just breaks my heart. What are we paying for? Where is the quality? But I'm a big fan, proponent of self-directed services. And how do we prevent these inpatient hospitalizations? Are people getting proper amount, scope, and duration of CLS in home, but to find the person to work with these extraordinary behaviors, where are they? I mean, Vince Hope struggles to find CLS workers too. It's constant turnover, the training, trying to understand a nonverbal aggressive person. And it's more than just pulling someone off the street. They have to have the heart for it. Caregiving is a gift. The ones you do find who can manage, they burn out too. But as parents, if we burn out, then what? There's probably people that go 5, 7 different group homes, and all those transitions just add to the trauma and, you know, literally kicking a person out, multiple discharges. And if I can't do it, who will? we've had that experience multiple times, and it begins with the basic training. But where are the people? Yeah.
Dollars and cents don't always, it doesn't always incentivize compassion, right? Service-driven hearts. So, yeah, we need to find the right candidates too. So, are there any other comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to say this meeting is adjourned.